So yes, this I think is a very going to be one of the most interesting sessions of MMR, because we have a galaxy of very distinguished CHROs in the panel of very large companies. As you'd have seen the lineup of people, it is distributed from IT to retail, I mean e-commerce, to large formats in retail, as well as the EBOs. So it covers the whole gamut of retail in the country, and so I'm sure this esteemed panel is going to add a lot of value. As this topic says, it is what is the CHRO's vision in this a paradigm shift which is required, and their vision to create a new kind of organization. I think that's what is required today. And how are we going to reinvent and how look at things very differently? So that's what is going to be the topic today. And if you look at it, we started when the pandemic came in sometime, the heat of the pandemic in March. We started off with, business continuity plans. How do we do it? We were not sure how long this pandemic is going to go. It can be 1 month, 2 months. We just prepared ourselves for who can work out of home, who can actually work out of office, and when can we start normal work. But then going forward, it came to reality that this is not going to be very soon, and we need to look at new ways of life, of working. And that is how, organizations have today kind of realigned themselves and reinvented themselves. And each organization has its own challenges. Today, if you look at it, the businesses are very different. If you take retail, definitely the grocery retail or the hypermarkets, it was much better placed than those in the, in the malls, because malls did not open. And then it also happened that e-commerce picked up. I think e-commerce definitely kind of started doing much better. So each of the organizations had its own ways of how it had to look at their work, because some organizations could not afford the kind of people they had. So they had to make it leaner at this point of time. And that's something which also happened. And people started reinventing in terms of how do we engage our employees in these circumstances? How do we actually kind of, continue our learning and development initiatives in this situation? And also when, a lot of people were outplaced or, had to kind of be, job loss was there, then I think the gig economy also picked up. I think today there were a lot of people available who can work from anywhere for a shorter period of time. So I think a lot of things have happened over the period of the last 6 months, and we have reinvented, and going forward, it's going to be very different. So I thought maybe just to give you an overview as to how we've thought of. Another aspect I think I missed out is on wellness. I think a lot of emphasis is now on wellness. I think most organizations, not only for COVID, but when wellness in general, I think people are getting focused. So for these are some of the topics that we could discuss, and I'm sure before we kind of get to specifics, I thought we'll have an overall view of the esteemed panel here, and maybe we can start with anybody. I mean, we can start maybe with Harsh, and then go to Raj, maybe Adhir, Shekhar, Nirav, and Venkatesh. I think we can have that order. And maybe the first question I have for all of you, keeping your industry or category in mind, what would be your vision towards reinventing your workplace post-pandemic? You could speak about the initiatives you've already taken in this direction, and maybe we can keep it for about 2 minutes each, so that it gives everybody, in terms of your industry or organization, what has been done so far. So maybe Harsh, would you like to start off?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Venkataramana. Thank you for this lovely start. I would be talking, but I would be talking in a sense of, I represent a company that has about 140,000 employees across about 105 countries. Including about 123 nationalities that we have. So for us, obviously, it was a serious big reset across the world. And, with this big reset coming, Interestingly, the new normal became the now normal. So what we were supposed to come in some years ahead is actually today the reality for us. And as we look at, coming back to a form of normality, there are some non-negotiables that have happened because of the pandemic. So workplace optionality, which means whether you work from office or work from anywhere, is a clear new non-negotiable. Really, you talked about holistic well-being, whether it's mental or physical, is key. Personalization, whether it is beyond the employee to the families or beyond the office hours to the home. And of course, meaningful work has become very important. You talked about gig working. We have lots of gig workers, but we clearly see that purpose drives talent today. And anytime, anywhere, any device is a given today. And we clearly see some of the things that will change is going to touchless experiences. I'll take a minute to tell you on some of the things that we have done. One of the biggest problems in this pandemic was people didn't know whether they were asymptomatic, were they suffering from any kind of COVID disease. There was no test available in the country or anywhere in the world. RT-PCR was very expensive and not available. So we actually came up with a solution which we even now claim to be one of the best in the world. 98% accurate, done within 6 minutes. It's a AI run tool, which is our patent. We run a series of tests and give the result in about 8 minutes time. We can talk about comorbidity, and we can talk about whether you're COVID positive or not, even asymptomatic cases. We have run it across our 130,000 employees. We are also doing it for other companies, which are very large service companies, keeping their workforces safe. So use of technology is the key. It has hyperleaped about 20 years. M Healthy, as we call the solution, is one example. Just before the COVID, thankfully, we had also invested significantly in technology. For example, at Tech Mahindra, we don't use ID cards. Everything is through facial recognition, right up to your payroll. So actually, you don't need to touch anything as you come in. You don't need to swipe anywhere. In Tech Mahindra, in HR, we have the first non-human employee. It's a humanoid, can give all L1 answers. So in our company, if you have a question regarding your leaves, if you have a question regarding your travel entitlements, it goes to the humanoid, and it was available 24/7 even during the pandemic. We have our own chatbot called Yubo. It can do everything from finishing your travel bills, doing your first level recruitment, again to even applying for leaves if you are sick. Some of the other examples, there are many, but I'll restrict it to a few. We have what we call Book My Seat app. When the pandemic hit us, and the buildings were only 33% occupied because the rest were cordoned off. You could actually book your seats and come to the office knowing that you have to go to a particular seat and not sort of look for things around. Similarly, everything that we have is run on technology, gamified, and there is no touch that an employee has to do. At the end, what we believe is that through technology, which has been, gone generations forward during this pandemic, we have been able to impress upon what we call human relations and human experiences. And I think, and maybe later on I'll give you some more examples, but clearly technology is our engine. But we do believe that while technology can be an enabler, moments of truth are still human. And therefore, at the end, a high-tech solution has to deliver a high-touch approach. So that's all. Over to you, Venkat.
Yeah, thanks, Harsh. I think Harsh comes with, abundance of knowledge, not only in the tech industry. He was with pharma for a long time, with Fortis, and then with retail. He also with Aditya Birla retail. And I think Airtel was also a long spell. So I'm sure we can get a lot of inputs from you. Maybe going forward, we look forward to. Thank you. Thank you so much, Harsh.
Thank you, Venkat. Thank you. Pleasure is all mine.
So next we have Raj. Raj has been a hardcore retailer for a long, long time now. I think close to 20 years. Metro Cash and Carry International, then India, and then international. Now with Titan for 8 years, transformed the organization. And I'm sure you have a lot to speak about your specific industry, especially when you take jewelry, and if you take it's very different from what other industries are. And I think over to you, Raj, and we look forward to your kind of
Thanks,
thoughts.
Venkat. Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to set the backdrop a bit. We are, of course, in a category or sets of category which are discretionary. But some of the areas that we are in, for example, jewelry is seen as. Can you hear me, Venkat?
Yes,
You can,
yes.
right? All right. I guess all conversations start with that line nowadays. Anyway, so jewelry is seen as a store of value. So from that perspective, while it's still discretionary, there is a demand for jewelry. And eyewear again is a necessity in some ways. People need to see well. So, but watches and apparel, which is saris that we are in, are both fairly discretionary. But the good news is that while we had a shutdown for the months of April and May, and stores started opening up, the recovery, touch wood, has been reasonably good in all our categories. And I guess a lot of the credit for that goes to our frontline sales force. And the work that they did when all our stores were shut. And I think if you were to ask me to look at the organization of the future, right, and what is our vision for it, it stems somewhere from not just this last 6-7 months, but from where we've evolved over a period of time. And work on technology has been happening with all of us retailers. And I think the first area I would say is C, which is connected. Yeah. And I would use technology as one of the things. And connected from an employee being connected to the customer, and from employees being connected to each other, as well as from the organization being connected to employees. And I think those 2 months of being closed taught us a huge lesson. While in retail, we cannot have work from home, we can, because our business to a large extent, especially for brick and mortar retailers like us, happens in our stores. A lot of activity, of course, shifts to the third platform, which is the e-com platform, for sure. But Omni has become much larger, and the acceleration for Omni being used has certainly happened in this period. Yeah, and in this hiatus, I think you see a lot more customers using Omni. So either before they come to the store, or they come to the store and afterwards. So a retail employee needs to be connected with the customer. So there's a lot of work that happened in training and capability building. So that is the second C. We need capable people. So work on capability building in connecting with customers, in using technology, in using analytics, right? The day is not far off when there's a lot more technology happening in stores. And especially in categories like ours, where the interaction with the salesperson is much higher as compared to, say, a supermarket, right? A salesperson will, when a customer comes to him or her, by the time the customer reaches him or her, be far more informed about that customer's profile using various elements of technology. Now, salespeople need to be developed in that area. So for me, like I said, I start with the C's, and I say there are 4 C's. So we need connected, we need capable people, we need people who are communicative. So I think communication during this period of the pandemic and going forward, I think we'll only build on it. Communication between employees, communication between managers and employees, between HR and employees, I think has exploded and has been far, far greater than what it was before. And I think we will see in the months, years to come by, that this will only grow. We also need people who are very confident. And in confidence, I would include safety of the workplace as well. How do you get confident about your workplace? When you know that your workplace is safe. So I think safety becomes a huge, area of focus from a customer's perspective, from an employee's perspective. So organizations need to ensure that the workplaces are far safer across the board, right from the entrance to areas inside, etc. And there are multiple protocols that need to be done, which also give us proactively what is the state of health on a real-time basis of all our employees. Last but not the least, apart from the 4 C's, I think we need focus on the area of the future, if you ask me, or the workplace of the future. I think happiness comes into force, right? And I think treating people well, people feel that, hey, by coming into work, I am making a difference not only to myself, but to society, to my customers. I think creates a certain sense of well-being and happiness. And I think focus on wellness, focus on fitness, focus on not just physical fitness, but mental, emotional, and financial wellness. I think there are lots of programs which have been unveiled over the last year, and specifically in the last 6 months. I think in the area of wellness, we kicked off a program a year ago called Will It and Well It. Will It, hashtag Will It Well It, and a lot of our employees were on that. We on the mental wellness, and under this we had different programs. On mental wellness, for example, we have helplines available where people can call if they need any help, and that's available to their families as well. I think in financial wellness, there's a lot of advice in terms of what people can do in terms of securing their future, especially, God forbid, there is ambiguity and uncertainty of this kind happening in the future, right? So I think people need to feel confident going into the future, and I think organizations and HR have a huge role to play in building that confidence of employees. On a last closing thing, looking at the future, I think it is very critical that we look at the way we work, the structures that we have, right? And I think the way performance is monitored, and I think there's using technology, there's a lot that can be done and has been done, and especially in the last few months. And I think that will continue into the future as well. So while technology will play a big role, I think using technology, HR and managers bring out the human side a lot more in prominence. And I think that makes a big difference. Yeah. So, I mean, these are some initial comments, Venkat. Happy to, build on this later in the subsequent discussion. Back to you.
Thank you, Raj. Actually, for your information, is a distinguished alumnus of XLRI, 36 years, I think 84 batch, right, Raj? And yeah, I think, you can really pick his brains. Thanks, Raj. Thank you. And now we have Adhir Mane. Adhir Mane is with Raymond, as we all know. Earlier, he was in Reliance, and then he was with the Landmark Group in Dubai, and Soin, Piramal, and he's also has a distinguished career. So your thoughts, Adhir?
Yeah. So thanks, Venkat, for calling me on. I think appreciate your invite here. First of all, let me place on record the appreciation for our frontliners across industries, be it Titan, be it Raymond, be it Aditya, Birla, shoppers, etc., etc. I think, and I think even Venkat, your lifestyle landmark, I think without them, probably we wouldn't have actually been where we are today. So my sincere appreciation goes to the frontliners today, and I think BS in the last speech also alluded to that. I think that's where probably we owe much more to the frontliners than any one of us out here or any one of us out there in the field as well. So that's something which I just wanted to openly declare and appreciate their presence and their kind of efforts so far. And I'm hopeful whatever they have done has been immense and phenomenal. And I think that's where we actually need to actually hone our strategies and approaches to look at and try and see how we can actually accelerate their participation, their kind of enhancement in the workplaces, etc. Having said that, I think one of the things which, from a vision standpoint, which I think is important is, first of all, let's actually work on the mindsets of people, because that's very, very critical and important, because actually create environments for people to experience the experience. This is once in a lifetime of an experience, I think, and that is where the experience of how we deal with changes. I think we do not need any change management program from any B school. The kind of changes that have happened in the last 6-7 months probably would have actually, people also would have developed their own strategy. But I think therefore, fundamentally, I think people also would need to be given channels, how they actually have experienced. And then, of course, there will be organizational inputs to manage these changes. But that's the fundamental premise where I'm coming from. Also, let's turn the VUCA on its head. I think let's turn VUCA, when it stands for volatility, to actually help leaders to set vision and clarity in the short term and the medium term and long term as well. Also, from an uncertainty to how can you actually develop systems to change their uncertainty to understanding and helping people and through communications to get the big picture in the organization where actually we are heading in this period, etc. Also, complexity through all this, can we actually turn complexity into clarity? And from anxiety, can we actually turn to agility and adaptability with systems and processes, which also Harsh alluded to in terms of any tech infusion that you have in the organization? How can you actually get this going in your organization? I think, therefore, leadership there gets a very, very critical role and a mantle here to actually turn that VUCA upside down and turn it and convert it for a positive benefit for all of us. The other part which I think comes to my mind is, of course, boundaryless is going to be more pronounced. And in a legacy organization like what we are, and also a new age organization that is a kind of a mix of two cultures sitting in one organization, I think we've actually come out as quite reasonably successful organization. Work from home, etc. is all known, but I think we were not necessarily a tech savvy company. But I think today, if I look 7, 8, 9 months down the line, I think the way people have actually taken to technology, be it Zoom, be it Teams, etc., it's like fish to water. So that insertion happened because of a force which came from outside. But I think there has been a lot of initiation that has been done from a company standpoint in terms of, we started series of how people need to work from home, what kind of inputs that we need to have. So therefore, a capability building happened as to, for managers, for supervisors, as well as people in leadership and across, as to what it means for work from home. Because we've not necessarily had work from, I mean, for Harsh, probably it could be a different ball game, but for me, it was very different in terms of what do I do actually when I do work from home. So that was an initial launch where, and the launch is still, and the programs from a capability standpoint are still continuing as to what do we do when we actually are when we are sitting at home, and actually how do I manage teams in remote areas? How do I manage issues of people? So that's one part. On the fun part, we also had virtual cafes launched to actually get away people from the boredom. So which had a lot of content of family meetings of people, etc. So that was another part. Also on the technology front, we've actually relaunched our own HRMs. I think what Harsh also alluded was we've not got operational completely, but I think there is an operation of the chatbots in our system already happening. And what would have taken us immense amount of time to launch technology, an example in our case in point is the Teams. We have platform of Teams here, which was a 1-year plan for us to be launched. I think we crunched down to maybe a month's time. So I think that's what actually changed. That's what the kind of change that we have actually gone through. Teams is very alien to us, many of us, I think, but most of us have taken like fish to water. The other thing that we've developed is that basically setting up norms for these kind of remote working, this kind of working that we were not used to. So that was a clear mandate that we had given to us. So what could be some of the norms that we would have for work from home as an organization? More importantly is basically it's a work in progress, but really how do I actually work on the mindsets of people, a legacy mindset to actually accept changes and really looking for a person in flesh and blood as opposed to remote. So I think as leaders, as organizations, a large part of work has been done and is still ongoing, is to working around changing of mindsets and looking at how to actually embrace these newer ways of working. The other piece which Raj also was talking about was the fact that we launched in this crisis an EAP program for our employees. I think employee assistance program, which had a one-on-one counseling mechanism, which had a lot of counselors on the go, which had a lot of things to do with financial counseling, mental counseling in terms of relationships, many other parts, and how to actually work from home. So a lot of program went digital basis that. The sweet spot that we were in is the technology that we currently have is the One Button Connect, which we actually have. I think the physical training for people is almost come to a zero in our organization. This we had launched about 2 or 3 years earlier. And this was very, very handy for us. And I think the entire product training got online for us. I think right from front end to all the works. So this technology we have made uses to the hilt with an adoption rate of more than 70-80%, which was there in the works for us. But this one button connect actually helped us a lot in this season to actually keep the entire sales force engaged on the front line. I think all my training, the season training, etc., got onto this, the product training, etc. So for me, that which was launched about a year back kind of got accentuated today, and this has been of an immense help to from a capability standpoint, a building standpoint. Because had this not been there, probably I would have wondered as to what do I do in terms of learning and kind of providing inputs to my people at the front lines. So that is something which came handy, and it has been used to the hilt. The second thing, of course, is the safety and security of people who are working on the front line. So all what has to be done in terms of making the workplace very safe has been delivered to people. But I think largely, from a forward standpoint, I think what will be important for us, and I just want to just take 1 minute here, is how do I actually work on mindsets of people to embrace these changes on an ongoing basis? Because it's not going to be that the work from home or any other of these mechanisms are going to be just used for last 6-7 months. But I think we will want to adopt this as ways of life for the future in the organization. So with that, I think back to you, Venkat. These are my initial thoughts. Of course, as time permits, we'll kind of share a few more insights as to what we are doing, etc.
Thanks, Adhir. Quite a few initiatives. I think been quite informative. Thank you. So next we have Chandrashekar. We call Chandrashekar. Chandrashekar has been a long time with Birla and recently moved to retail. I mean, that's not recent, but a few years now. And I'm sure he has a lot of insights, and we'll see what their vision is. Aditya Birla's vision and Chavan's vision. I mean, Shekhar's vision. Yeah, over to you, Shekhar.
Thank you. Thank you, Venkat, and thank you, panel members. I think we've had a very interesting set of perspectives. I'll spend a minute or two on what we did in COVID, and then all our offices and stores much before even the national lockdown, the first phase of national lockdown. And I think this was just done in the interest of safety of our employees, our customers, also to correct the belief that the stores have to keep working because customers are coming in. And I think by that one single stroke, we kind of ensure that we convey a deep message that everybody's lives, whether you're a frontline employee working in the store, whether you're a factory employee working in our factories, or whether you're a designer working on in the office, all lives are equally important. And I think that decision really helped us convey that. As the number of cases started to increase in our company, we instituted a COVID assistance and emergency response program. It was a basket of medical advice, hospital facilitation, medical testing, insurance for the store manager, for the store employee, as well as for the family members. And many other things actually were bundled together to really cater. And, we had to create this ecosystem because this kind of ecosystem was not available. So I think these two things really helped us convey our position, and series of actions that followed are pretty similar to what many of you have described. But looking ahead, Venkat, I think COVID is here to stay, and we will all have to operate with that assumption, I guess. We can always be hopeful, but we need to be prepared for the worst. In many ways, COVID has only exposed the white spaces. It has only exposed the development areas on which we ought to have acted even faster, even earlier. And I think COVID, to my mind, is just it is just showing us the mirror of possibly where we could have acted faster and better, ahead. And as I look ahead, the core question for us really is to say that we are essentially a brick and mortar with revenues from online under 10%. And if we have to really become a truly omni-channel and a truly digital organization, as indeed we ought to be, what is the business model change that we need to have in our organization? I think how different is the business model going to be than what we are today? That to me is the first question as we stare at the future. And following from the business model, I think there are a series of questions which will help us define the vision for our workplace and workforce and work. And these questions really are all around to say, what is the purpose that we try to achieve here? Is it limited to monetary gains, like any, like all business houses would talk about? Is it for the larger impact of making the customer look good, feel good? Is it for the community impact? Is it to enable our employees find true meaning and purpose in whatever they do to make their lives much more fulfilling? Because home is second home, office is the first home, right? We all know that. So how do we therefore create a purpose for our employees, which is centered around the purpose for our brands, which is driving our brand purpose? I think to me that is really the first question that will form a key part of our HR vision. The second one really would be, what kind of leadership DNA we need to build, we need to acquire to create the inspiring impact. Because Adhir talked about VUCA, and many of you talked about it being very, very volatile as we go ahead. And therefore, what kind of inspiring, enabling leadership we need as we go ahead? These are not only result-oriented leaders, but also inspiring leaders. Excuse me. I think the third thing really is this hybrid working has created a huge amount of need for us to look at what is the collaboration between multiple teams that exist today, and how can we enhance that collaboration levels. Various teams work very closely with each other, the design guys, the product guys, the buyers, the sourcing people. How do we build the collaborative fabric within them through work, through reinforcements, through incentive mechanisms, through even re-architecting the team? My day job could be that I'm a product person. My night job could be that I'm actually part of a company-wide project, which takes me away from my day job. So how do we build in the concept of super jobs, therefore, for our employees, so that they are in a position to collaborate effectively and seamlessly with everybody else? As we look ahead, we will need a new set of skill sets for our employees. And I'm not only talking about integration of technology with the domain skill sets, but really to say this whole ability of taking risk, I think is going to be a premium for all of us. The ability to say no to a failure. You fall down when there is a failure, you get back again to take on a fresh and a new challenge. We talk a lot about empowerment, but empowerment also needs a basic capability to deal with the higher order decision making that is expected in an empowered organization. So new world order skill sets for managers, for employees, certainly will be needed. And I think few of the parts will really be in the area of insightful decision making. Whether it is with respect to customers, whether it is with respect to vendors, whether it is with respect to production, whether it is with respect to our employees. And that is really the organizational call out that we will need to be, adept at. So for example, today, many decisions that we do in HR today, we do not have objective data and insights behind that, right? A lot of that is basis experience. And therefore, not only HR teams, but line managers who take people decisions on an everyday basis, we will have to arm them with enough of insights so that the quality of decisions is fairly objective and is rooted, far ahead. So I think these are some highlights of what our vision is looking like currently, and in reality, what we really would love to have also is a high amount of productivity across multiple parts of the organization. We got to really ask a core question of what is our core capability and what is not our core capability, and perhaps build an ecosystem around what is not our core capability. that's something we will have to review as we go forward. So in a nutshell, our vision for the future, Venkat, really is have a very, very lean organization, have a much more smarter organization which is technologically and digitally enabled. We pay them better than what we do today, because that benchmark always keeps on shifting. And all of this should result in a superior performance in a completely new business model transformation that we may find ourselves in the midst of. Over to you, Venkat.
Yeah, Shekhar, I think you touched upon some very important attributes, I think competencies, both managerial and leadership, I think, which is very critical, I think, now at these times. And also the business model. Today, I like, Nagesh was speaking in the previous session. So it is definitely going to be a digitized world. And how do you build capability to that? Because be it omni-channel or the e-commerce, brick and mortar shifting to that, I think it's going to be a lot on the HR business partners table. So that's something I think we definitely need to work. Thanks, Shekhar, for those good insights. And next we have Venkatesh Raja, Venki, as we call him. He has been with Shoppers now for more than a year and been with retail for a very long time. I'm sure he would have a lot of insights and the vision of what Shoppers has, as well as his vision towards what the future is going to look like. Over to you, Venki.
Thanks, Venkat. To start with, in Shoppers Stop, what we thought when we really hit the pandemic is we need to necessarily bring in a lot of positivity. Because in a situation like this, the first thing is people do not know what to do in uncertain situations. And people generally get inside a kind of a step back, and there are few who can also go through a depression because they really do not know what is that they need to do. So we ensured that we kept the employee communication intact. In fact, a couple of times we went overboard on employee communication. So we ensured that we really reach the last mile of employee on an ongoing basis. We used our social platform. We created the Shoppers Stop Got Talent, through which we did a lot of engagement to keep the entire team inspired, motivated, and be positive in a situation. We also used our train circle to reach each and every employee in terms of small nuggets of motivational videos, training, to reach, to get inside kernel of communication. Our MD and CEO personally had a complete town hall across the country to reach every employee and their family to ensure and to communicate to them that we as an organization are standing by them at any cost. So that message was very, very clear. And we also looked at the employee safety. From a safety standpoint, we ensured that each and every one are medically tested before we could even open the stores when the lockdown started slowly moving out. We also ensured that whichever few people got affected by the virus, we kept in touch with them in their family on an ongoing basis to ensure that to make them understand that we are there at any given point of time. To move into learning and development, yes, as other organization does, we also went through a lot of multi-skilling. We also got inside digital dexterity. We took the complete leadership team through a digital dexterity program. And we are in the process of cascading it down till the last mile, which will happen subsequently. We are already on the move. We also used various technology, various platforms to get inside more and more of competency-based training and endless aisle, omni-channel training, and shape from the store training. So various training and development which we focused on during this time. Work from home has been a norm, and those were the days. If you really look at, if you ask someone that should we really have a policy of work from home, I think we would have not done an analysis paralysis for 1 year and come back and said that this is the percentage of work from home, and some people will come and say this much. Meanwhile, the three viruses would have come and gone. So what we did is we did a work from home survey in the entire organization, and we figured it out that most of the people want to work from home. Also, we found out that there are some people who think that work from home is also stressful because there is no discipline which is brought in work from home kind of a system where calls are there on Saturdays, Sundays, people call at 10:30, night 11 o'clock. So there is no systematic approach to work from home. So we started really taking inputs from the survey, and we said that let us really streamline how we are going to have meetings, how are we going to have a scheduled discipline which is going to come into work from home kind of a policy, so that people can have a personal time in spite of continually sitting in the house and attending calls after calls after calls. We also started creating a culture of digital savvy and agility. And these are the things we have done in Shoppers Stop. Over and above that, we are also focused on wellness, apart from our normal Mediclaim and things like that. Whenever people are affected with the virus, we ensure that we take care of them, their entire medical bills are taken care of. We ensure that the family is kept in ease, constant touches there. Our recovery rate is more than 95-96% as of today. People who are affected with virus. These are the things from my side, Venkat.
Thanks a lot, Venki. I think a lot of initiatives and Shoppers. So Nirav, he was able to join us. Nirav actually had a sudden meeting with the board and then he got a little delayed.
My sincere apologies, Venkat and my co-panelists and all the audience here. Please accept humble apologies. The call got extended and I couldn't exit.
You're not late because we just finished the rest of them. So basically,
Thank you for kindness.
You all know is from Nykaa and he's the e-commerce specialist here with us. Exclusive e-commerce, and he's been with ILFS and other organizations. Over to you for your thoughts, what the vision is for your organization and your thoughts, please.
Yeah, so nobody could have prepared us for COVID. I think this resonates with us and the world across. So we were taken by surprise. But as an organization, I think a few things that come really up front for us is the grit and resilience of the staff. I think that's really come to the fore. And, for Nykaa, we have looked at that being displayed at across levels. What have we done during this time? We have really pivoted very, very strongly on our business model on this one. Just to give a sense, when the lockdown hit us, our revenues trickled down to about 8% of the revenue from what we were just the previous month. And with all the pin codes, Jambori that was going around with the government's opening, closing and all that, we had to be working practically almost on the live commands coming from government to design what we call as the supply chain plans, our brand plans. Also, in terms of our stores, when our stores shut down, we had to move to what we call as hyperlocal. So we converted our stores into hyperlocal avenues, and that's how we created our supply chain prowess further. We created avenues to ensure that we are able to move our inventory. Otherwise, we would have been saddled with a lot of that inventory. And unfortunately, we would have had to write those off. So we're able to move very quickly over there. The brands and sourcing team worked very, very diligently to get all our brand partners on board to ensure that whatever liquidity on the inventory had to be done was being done. Our inwarding done by the warehouse teams was being monitored on a very minute basis, because we wanted to ensure that we are not inwarding goods that we are not likely to sell. So there was a very strong coordination over there. The HR function by itself went through a massive transition itself. I think the first month we were just trying to figure out internet bandwidth at people's homes, honestly. We spent so much time doing that. But then once that got settled, I think it was more about, how do we engage people remotely? Because, we never knew, we'd never prepared for this. And what we put in place was, like a weekly call, and we created a dashboard. And we ensured that we touch base with at least 70-80% of our population under each of my people partners to ensure that connect continues, right? all my retail stores staff was put on a strict training and development plan. So we actually conducted about 2,300 sessions of training in this period. Yeah. Thankfully, since July onwards, we've been able to do a remarkable turnaround because e-commerce, as you know, has been able to get out of this situation a little earlier than the conventional businesses in the brick and mortar. So that was good. I'm glad to report also the fact that our stores are coming back to pre-COVID numbers. So this is again a very, very good sign for everybody on this call, because I think the customers are coming back into shops. I think there's a lot of faith in what retail structure is bringing to customers. So I think these are all positive signs. One of the biggest learnings for us has been how can we be agile? And so at a management level, we are working on agile projects. We have run about 8 projects right now, and all of these are being monitored directly by the management team. We have what we call as sponsors for each of these agile projects that we intend to work, and these are spanning across. There is technology, there is warehousing, there is finance project, there is HR project. So all of these projects have a sponsor, and they are all being run parallelly. So thanks, Venkat, for the opportunity. I just want to quickly come in. I hope I've been able to summarize adequately and give everybody a gist of what's been the world for the last 7 months at Nykaa.
Thanks, Nirav. So I just see that we're kind of running out of time because we have 6 distinguished, panelists and, CHROs of eminence, and all of them talking about initiatives itself took almost 45 minutes. So I think we have another 15 minutes. That's what is there. So I just thought 2 questions I'll pose, and then maybe we can have our thoughts. Something on gig economy. I think today, with all the job losses, the kind of, short-term jobs which people are looking at. So who would like to, Harsh, I'm sure it would be very in your industry, this is dominant, and I'm sure it will spread to retail and others. Harsh, you want to take this and just kind of...
Yeah, so thanks. It's a great question. While the pandemic has been a social calamity, I think for business, it has also brought in an opportunity to experiment, because survival was key. And gig economy and diversity and inclusivity, I think, have become the 2 main sort of beneficiaries, or I would say unintended beneficiaries of this pandemic. Now, clearly, while earlier we had restrictions on, because we did not use technology to hire people from across the world. Today, if we have a problem, we don't hire for that particular problem, but we actually crowdsource. We have a gig platform called, we have a gig platform internally developed called flex.ai, where for every issue, we can crowdsource the answers. We can take people per hour, per day, per month, or even for a few weeks. And the payment to all of those people have become instant through the use of blockchain. So again, I think while this pandemic has taught us a lot of things that sort of we did not know earlier, it has also presented for us and some businesses a great opportunity. I was hearing intently as my co-panelists were speaking, and Raj did mention that, for us, it was strange. 130,000 employees had to be fully functional from their houses within 48 hours, because if those guys were not functioning, bank would not function, e-commerce retail would not function, police force would not function, telecom would not function. And for us, the realization was we had to use innovative ways to make them up and running in the first 48 hours. And I think that, to my mind, is also a reason which propelled gig economy or gig workers to come and sort of work for companies like us, and I'm sure like all of us here. So I think it's a great opportunity. Not only does it optimize its cost, it also gets you the best talent across the world and beyond boundaries like it has never happened before. So clearly a great example of what good can happen through a calamity.
Great. Thanks, Harsh. I think it's quite insightful. So my next question was, how do CHROs ensure productivity and efficiency from work from home. So basically, I think that is a challenge also. Some of them, in terms of how do we kind of monitor and make sure that they become effective. Who wants to take this? Raj, you want to take this? I mean, because we just have maybe one or two more topics we can discuss, and then we leave it to the PR Raj. Raj, you're muted.
I'm good now? All right.
Yeah, you're fine. Yeah.
So I'm going to give this a very different spin, right? I think it starts with trust, right? Unlike a lot of the tech organizations where you can monitor, login time and you can monitor various things, right? I think at least till such time that organizations have, very intrusive technology, in place. I think we will need to, before that, and I think hopefully that's a little away, I would say, tongue in cheek, I would say that we should look at trusting people and look at outcome-based results, right? And it's not about the hours you spend, it's about what do you want to get out of people in the time that they spend at work. A person can work from 4:30 in the morning till 6:30 if that suits him or her, right? And do stuff at home from 6:30 to 10, right? And then work again. So the number of hours need not be continuous. It can be spread over a period of time. So I think we need, as CHROs, need to bring in, if you ask me, a greater focus on the what and how work is done, right? And I think if we are able to get our goal setting done in such a way that people are absolutely clear what is expected of them, right? And that clarity, and if there are reach out programs where people can reach out to each other, I think peer pressure builds as well. And I think most people will agree with me, with organizations like ours where perhaps work from home was not something which was a norm, and it's new in the last, especially the period of the lockdown. And now with more than 50% of our work, especially office workforce, working out of home, I think work pressure has actually increased. And lines between work and home have blurred. And it's not about work-life balance anymore, it's about work-home balance, right? And I think and managers and HR need to ensure that those norms are kept, understood, and respected and maintained. So I think, at the risk of sounding a little philosophical, trust begets trust, and trust begets productivity as well. Because when you trust somebody, they own it. And I think that's when productivity really grows, right? It's not about having this big brother watching you kind of thing to ensure productivity in my book, yeah? And I think I've followed that even otherwise, even when we were working in an office, and I've followed that right through, and it helped me, and I think it's helped our organization. We work that way. We try and inspire performance rather than demand performance as an organization, and it's held us in good stead. And I think we continue to do that as a large part of our office folk work from home, right? And I think the results are there to see. And for manufacturing and retail, it's a different story. I know people who, in their weeks that when we do alternate weeks, for example, when the weeks that they are at home, they contact customers. There's video selling happening. There's a lot of work happening from home. That will surprise you, in terms of, so it's not that a retail person is working out of home is sitting idle. No, not at all. In fact, I think to the contrary, I think productivity has actually gone up, and I think it's critical that as CHROs, we keep a tab on the culture of the organization, in my view. That will ensure productivity happens.
Yes, Raj. The Tata's philosophy resonates in you. I mean, being a Tata employee, so great. So I think what we'll do, we'll have one last question now within the panel. Then I think the rest of them can answer questions from the audience. So my last question maybe is to Chavan. Shekhar. Shekhar, today, if you look at it, they're all geographically spread, and I'm sure, especially your organization also, if you look at it, they're all. So how do you actually bring bonding, and how do you bring collaboration in this, this new way of working?
I think, given the fact that we are geographically dispersed, I think that is how perhaps the organization from the outside might be seeing it. But I think the core question for us really is to say that how do we continue to make our employees in the stores in far-flung areas and in remote sites to feel a part of the mainstream of the organization? And I think so there are Hajar activities we do, engagement, and I won't get into that. But I think what is most premium and valuable for us is really the role that our store managers play. And we are trying to re-architect the role of our store manager to say that he basically has two things to do. One is he should make the place a great place to shop for our customers and a great place to work for our employees. If he does these two things, he's home. And I think how do we therefore build the capacity and capability in him, in the store manager to be able to do that? One of the things that we've started pretty recently is we have tied up with IIM Indore, and we are taking some of our top store managers, and we've created a program called India's Finest Store Manager Program. This is really giving a store manager a deep taste of what it means to be a general manager of the store. So everything starting from the P&L of the store all the way to hiring for the store, everything is part and parcel of that program. And our belief is that if the store manager does his job well, I think 60-70% of our work, both on the business side as well as on the engagement and collaboration side and employee health side in the store, is really achieved. Not really rests on that single individual.
Yeah. Thanks, Chandrashekar. Coming back, I think there are some questions from the audience. So we have another 5 to 7 minutes left. So maybe we'll answer 2 or 3 of them. So Adhir, can you take this question? The question is what kind of reskilling do HR professionals have to do in the present circumstances?
I think a good question. I mean, we are all learning as we go on the job. I think that's the biggest thing that HR has to do. I think there's no specific recipe for reskilling. But I think I'll talk in the context of the pandemic and then for the future in that sense. So I will divide this question into one is immediately in the here and now situation, what needs to be done from an HR skilling standpoint. Also in the future, because the pandemic hopefully is not going to last for lifelong, and I hope so. So what are those dimensions that we look at? Coming to this, I think biggest is the biggest challenge that HR would have gone through is the kind of change management that they've gone. So I think each HR person, be any levels I'm talking about, how he or she would be able to manage and actually effectively derive this change. I mean, organizations have gone through a whole host of initiatives on restructuring and many things. So I think that's a critical pivot as to what is the kind of outlook on change and how do we actually mitigate a change. Therefore, that skilling in itself was phenomenal for us as an organization. All of us went through this turmoil internally as well as in the organization. So that is a big one that I thought is an important, that how do you actually embrace change, because you are yourself being affected by that change. And then you have to kind of put that across to others also to kind of mitigate. So I think being change leaders themselves, they had to actually manage that change. Therefore, that is a big one. Second is, in the newer sense, how do you actually develop connectivity? I think from a communication standpoint, when people are working from, so that is another skill. If you're not a technology gig yourself, how do you actually reskill yourself to actually be a technology gig in the shortest period of time and connect to people, etc., on an ongoing basis? The third thing really is about managing your own emotions. I think most of the time we as HR folks forget that we got to manage people and manage for other people. But I think having a mindset where you probably train yourself to be mindful and try to be more kind of in the here and now situation. So I think that is an important skill, that how much have you actually looked back within yourself to manage these changes around you. So I think the VUCA outside is not so important, but the VUCA within, how have you managed to control that? And that's a big skill HR people have to actually transfer that knowledge and kind of element to all outside. In the longer term, of course, there is the whole host of things that an HR professional would have gone through in terms of technology upgradation and what have you. But typically, today's HR, probably, as someone also alluded on the panel, is not a very, very data savvy person. I think going forward, we will have to ramp up our data skills, and not just the descriptive side, but I think right from descriptive to diagnostic to predictive and the whole works of prescriptive. And that's a journey that HR will have to actually traverse. This is beyond pandemic. I'm just saying that I think from an analytic standpoint, what is that we will actually bring to the table as an HR person, that is going to be very, very critical. So I think most of the decisions in the HR are and will be in the future will be evidence and database. So I think therefore an analytical bent of mind as to how do you actually traverse the journey of your HR analytics across the spectrum is going to be very critical. Of course, as Raj also alluded, I think HR will be harbinger of trust, culture, and the softer part. But I think that they will have to carry on as people go around on this change journey. Also, critically, understanding businesses in depth. I think that's one critical aspect. I mean, across levels. And they themselves should consider as business manager. HR is not something away from business. So typically the old thing, but I think it's getting more pronounced. Understanding what business model changes are happening and what is its impact in the environment is what is the HR will have to understand. So therefore, understanding business model changes in its total. I mean, it's very easy to talk in these programs about being phygital and, so rather than not just getting into semantics, but really understanding the nuts and bolts of business so that whatever strategies, approaches that you bring will be able to actually talk the business language. And that remains a skill for yesterday, today, and for tomorrow. If you do not understand that part, I think that will be a loss for the HR fraternity, so to speak. So I think also develop an outside-in perspective. For me, HR's customer is not an internal customer alone. It has to be starting from the customer on the floor. And if you look at from an outside-in perspective, that's the starting point for us to develop all what is needed from a skill set standpoint. So therefore, a change of mindset, not just an internal customer, but really at a market level, what is happening, and therefore looking at that dimension, bringing that into the fore to develop whatever strategies, approaches. And that's a mind shift change we as HR folks need to actually have within us to actually mitigate anything which is very, very qualitatively different for the future.
Great, Adhir. You've really given, quite a few insights, not only for HR professionals, but for budding HR professionals as part of our panel. So, our audience. So, just one tip from Nirav and Venki to the students in terms of what competence they need to kind of, build to become, a strong HR professional, because we are a CHRO group, and what will be 30 seconds, Nirav, what would be that tip you would give them?
Sure. Venkatesh, you want to go first or should I take it up?
Go ahead,
all right, thanks. So, two things. Venkat, I'm just going to take liberty to state two things. Number one, please know the numbers. All right. You should have a strong numerical analytical ability. Please, if you don't have that ability, please develop that. Number one. Second, understand the comprehensiveness of the businesses. I think Adhir was referring to that. You should have the ability to comprehend what are the drivers of business. These are the two things that you need to start building now. Every individual will have their own journey. So I would recommend you should start right away. Thanks.
Thanks, Nirav. Venki?
From my standpoint, I think we need to move from the textbooks and academics and move into relevant competencies which they need to build upon, more or less to do with entrepreneurial orientation, solution orientation, to be more digital savvy, have plenty of empathy, and of course, jugaad. These are the things which I would recommend they should pick up, apart from being completely passionate about what they are doing.
Great. Thanks, Venki. I think it was quite illustrative, elaborate, and I'm sure a lot of insights have come to, I think, the HR professionals who have joined in. I think thank you, esteemed panel. I think it was great interacting with all of you, and I'm sure there has been a lot of learning for the audience, and I think it's great meeting all of you. Thank you so much.